What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Jacked Ramsays. Danny Marang and just me. This is weird. It's going to take some getting used to. It is the first Jacked Ramsays Live of the new season officially. We are underway. We have begun the 2024-25 season with Portland Trailblazers Media Day. And with that, a new chapter, a new story, a new whatever you want to call it is out there. It's underway. And it's very interesting to take a look at where things are at now, a year removed. Well, I mean, a little bit more than a year removed now, or 29th. So it's a year removed tomorrow. No, it was yesterday, wasn't it? Yeah, today's the 30th. Yeah. So we are now a year removed from the Damian Lillard trade, and things are drastically different heading into this training camp. There's so many more known quantities. There's certainly plenty of questions, of which you guys submitted I believe this is the actual measurement, a metric crap ton. Shout out to you guys. I do appreciate always getting all the questions. I am going to try to get through as many as I can. But this was easily the quietest, least newsy media day that I've ever been a part of. So 10, 12 years. I can't remember a time when there was kind of a, I don't want to say laissez-faire or even like boring. It was just very matter of fact and very simple, which it's just a very, very different spot from where things were a year ago. Why is it different? Obviously, besides Damian Lillard, you don't have guys, Malcolm Brogdon, Robert Williams III, DeAndre Ayton, Toumani Camara, who don't know their teammates up and down the roster. You don't have guys coming into town a week before the season. You don't have a front office or a coaching staff that is looking at things and going, okay, I know we're going to make a move. I just don't know what this team is going to look like heading into the season. And because of that, I think it amplifies just how different this group, this class, this season is as far as getting into it. Just kind of starting at the top on the basketball side of things with General Manager Joe Cronin. The overarching theme, I mean, I had Dwayne Hankins on my show with Dusty the day after the TV deal, so a week ago tomorrow. So he came on Tuesday. And one of the things he said then was, we're aware kind of the wins and losses aren't going to be there. Well, the losses will be there. They'll be there in plentiful. But there has been trying to think of the exact word that I want to use for this. There's been an acknowledgement of what this season is going to be. And I think that's, if not mildly telling, mildly important. There's not a, last year, I hate doing this because it feels like I'm throwing Scoot under the bus. But that's not what I'm doing, nor the front office. I just think it's a tactful change. And last year, remember Joe Cronin said that Scoot Henderson was not a normal teenager and that they were really looking forward to it. And I don't think they felt like that was wrong. And at the time, I didn't feel like that was wrong. But there's one thing as far as like PR, unless you've got Victor Wembanyama, I don't think you need to heap the unnecessary praise on rookies, because so many rookies, even the best ones, are going to struggle. And remember last year, the first Wemby had his first game at Summer League, and people were like, "Oh my God, is he a bust?" And it was being down at Summer League was hilarious. You're like, "What are you talking about? What are you doing?" And then he blows up, and then he has some poor shooting nights early with the Spurs, and it was like, oh, is it getting to him? And then, he basically puts up lines that nobody else has ever put up in basketball history. So with that, there's like a sliding scale of like where a rookie is, right? And I think even Joe Cronin said it, we have to temper some expectations when it comes to Scoot and Shaedon. And I don't think he was saying that as a way to downplay how good they will or won't be. But it's like, outwardly, it does nobody any good to set the bar here and then hope they get there. Let them get there. When you're a developing team, when you're a team in the bottom trying to find your way up, let the stories tell themselves. You can do, special interest pieces or get to know you pieces. Like, you really push those. You can develop those. Dwap Reith, going from South Sudan, Australia, and having Tease end up, kind of helping him tell his story last year in their little documentary series was awesome. Like, that stuff I think you can gas up. I think you can lift that up, right? But I think you just kind of have to let the basketball thing be the basketball thing. Because if you start putting that bar up there and you don't live up, the people are already tune out even more. And I think that it's exponentially difficult in Portland because it's the single, big three sports team. And because this fan base has been spoiled for most of its existence. And I don't mean to call you like spoiled fans in the sense of like entitled, but with the exception of the last couple of years of the Jailblazers, most of you have never known losing at any point in time. That just hasn't. The franchise's success, I believe they're 6th all-time right now in winning percentage. Depending, the last time I looked up was 6th or 7th. And that only dropped because of the last couple of years, So there's this idea of like, look, if we temper expectations and we get some surprises along the way, that's better for us in the long run, right? That's the thing that you can do. That's the, like, hey, this is the beacon on the hill. But so much of today was about the little things. And you heard Chauncey, you heard Joe, and you heard the other players, young and old, talk about the different things that they're looking at this season. And no one mentioned wins. No one mentioned about, hey, they said they want to win, but there was no like, hey, we're going to go, like, I'm going to go out there and do the best we can, and hopefully we're pushing for a playoff spot. Like, there wasn't a drop of that. I don't think I heard the word playoffs today, other than we're not in the playoffs, So I find that to be a really interesting spot to start in, because I've heard so many fans in a way say, I just want them to be honest. Tell us they're going to come out here and tank. This is the closest you're going to get. And for everybody out there still like, well, I could see. No. I am not going to tell you how to fan, but I'm going to tell you organizationally what is going to happen. They are chasing Cooper Flack. They are chasing Ace Bailey. They are chasing Dylan Harper. They are chasing whoever is going to be that savior, that beacon on the hill. And they have to. It's the right course of action. You can argue the merits of tanking, or say if you don't like it, or there's a different path that you need to go down, blah, blah, blah. Mathematically, that's the way it goes. That's the way it goes. And that is the best part of it, as far as that's the process you need to undergo unless you're Los Angeles, New York, or Miami, or in those general markets. That's just the nature of the beast. Particularly with the way the new CBA is laid out. You're just not going to see folks changing teams. I mean, it's going to happen here or there. So we just saw the trade for Cat. But I think you can find people who agree and disagree on whether or not it was a good trade, bad trade for either or both sides. So, but I think that's going to kind of be less likely outcomes in the future as those kind of trades, unless you're talking about teams getting off money. So I'm not going to go through each and every each and every like line by line of where things or what each player did. I'll just kind of bring up some of the highlights, mostly because there wasn't a ton that came out today. Joe was obviously asked about what transactions or whether or not they're going to make any. I expect them to make transactions at the trade deadline. Things did not get that close as it pertains to Jeremy Grant getting dealt. I've been able to kind of talk to folks and work it out as far as where things currently are. From my understanding, Jeremy is very happy in Portland. He just had another kid. He is not actively trying to force his way out. He said today in his public comments that him and Joe have had discussions. They've had conversations, honest conversations, and they both know where each other stands. If the Los Angeles Lakers call up right now and offer that 29 and 31 first, Jeremy Grant would be a Laker. I say that very, 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 very confidently. Beyond that, I think the Blazers currently have 4 centers, and I don't think they're going to go and trade Donovan Clingan if they just got him, and I think they're happy with where they have with DeAndre Ayton right now. So I think Robert Williams III is probably another likely candidate who could get moved. And with that, from what I've heard over the last couple weeks, Rob's been pretty damn impressive on the floor. Now, his health is always going to be the mitigating factor, but having talked to a few guys who have been there, Rob has been a pretty bad dude on the floor, which shouldn't come as a surprise because he's a defensive player of the year caliber player. Like Robert Williams III, Time Lord, is a very good basketball player. The asterisk is how healthy is he, right? So if he's out there and he's healthy, and right now it sounds like he's almost all the way there. I asked him about his health, and I think more importantly for what he's going to be able to do, both short and long term, his mental and emotional state. Without getting into it, because that's not for me to share, having gone through a lot of those surgeries, it can be taxing. And I talked to Rob, a couple weeks after his surgery, and then a couple weeks later or a couple months later when he came back around, and that's kind of a struggle, right? And he mentioned today, the trust in his lateral mobility, like that. He said, there was a play I got switched on to Ant in an ISO, and he had a step back 3 on me, but I felt like I covered it really well. And I think the idea of like having to guard Anfernee Simons on the perimeter at 30 feet, if you're a big, you're like, oh, for the love of God. He's shifty, he's quick, it's one step fast, he can go every which direction comfortably. He can get in that step back and get you leaning up on your toes, get you to contest, pump and go, He can hit you with in and out, a little hezzy crossover. He can drag you out a little bit further, then get by you and get to that mid-range pull-up or the floater. And if you're a big, that's a nightmare scenario. Those are the kind of guys that you're like, I don't want to switch here. But Rob said he felt comfortable. And I think that's the thing that you're looking at right there. Physically comfortable, emotionally, mentally, like those are the things. I'm going to branch off here. I think, you know what? Yeah, that's actually what I'm going to do. There was a question in here. Let me find out where it was. Somebody had asked, here it is, from Rob Blaze. Should I be concerned about Clingan's playing time, given we have 2 centers clearly ahead of him in the depth chart, as well as another center who could be competing for minutes that Chauncey also likes, into Upreath? We drafted the guy 7th. I want him to have plenty of opportunity. Okay. He'll have opportunity, but there's going to be a caveat. Much like Scoot, much like Shaedon, you throw guys out there for what they can handle. Okay. Donovan Clingan, let me pull it back up here real quick. I can't remember his exact number off the top of my head. I'm getting old now. For the love of God, I'll be 40 in 2 weeks. If I remember correctly, is it 23 minutes? I don't think he played. Yeah, it was 22 and a half minutes last year at UConn. He's not played over 23 minutes a game. Like, okay. He's 7'2", 7'3", 280 plus pounds. almost no one that size plays 30-plus minutes a night unless they're a freak, in the sense of like Joel Embiid, the Nikola Jokic. Trying to think. It's a short list. Like, Nurk couldn't. Like, you saw when Nurk got past 30, you had diminishing returns. Right? You had this... Yeah, he was on the floor, but... and that was even without... Nurk's injury. Let me see. I think Nurk's highest was 32, if I remember right. 31.6. And that was in the 1920 season where he played 8 games. But other than that, he has never played more than 28.2 minutes a game. That's what happens when you're that big. So, in saying that, DA is going to play 30 a night. Rob's going to play, on nights that he plays, probably 12 to 18 between the 4 and the 5, I would imagine. But I don't think he's going to play back-to-backs early on, at least, and they're probably going to take care of him. Donovan's probably not going to play a ton. Like, on any given night, he may get a DMP. He may get, 6 minutes here, 6 minutes there. I don't think it's going to be something where they're doing anything more early on than trying to get his NBA legs and body underneath him. Zach Edey came out in the draft last year, and the feedback he got was he was nowhere near in shape, he was nowhere near mobile enough, and he was going to be a second-round prospect. This past year, he went 9th to Memphis. Yes, he had a spectacular season at Purdue, but the big thing was he got his body ready. He spent Zach Edey had a usage rate that was insane and played 38 minutes a night. Like, he absolutely ate minutes alive. And somebody that big, he's truly one of one. It's him and Joel Embiid. As far as, when you're talking about, 7'1" plus, 300-pound plus guys. That's not normal. I don't personally, from what I've seen from Donovan, I don't think he's going to be a guy who's getting 30 minutes a night in the NBA. I just don't. He's just so big. He's just so big. Like, when you guys actually get, if you come to FanFest on Saturday, and you get to see how big Donovan is up close, he is enormous. I think I've read it up before. He was in the 99th percentile of all combine measurements in the NBA since 2006. The only thing he wasn't in the 99th percentile when you're talking about actual tangible physical anthropomorphic data was hand width or hand length. It was one or the other. And in that case, he was in the 89th or 90th percentile. Otherwise, every box he was ticking, height, weight, a wingspan, reach, standing reach, everything, 99th, 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 99th. He's just enormous. And guys like that, it's just really, really hard to see him going out there and playing 32 a night, even at the peak of his career. I think he's going to end up being probably in that Nurk range. And if you get more than that, awesome. Awesome. That's fantastic. One of the comps, obviously, I think people have for him is like a Gobert type. And Rudy gets a lot of crap, but Rudy plays a ton of minutes. He has played over 30 minutes in all but 2 seasons of his career. And Rudy is massive. But also, if you go back and you look at Rudy Gobert's body, Rudy is jacked. There's not an ounce of fat on that dude. He is in incredible shape. Truly, truly incredible shape. And so I want him to spend his time getting work with NBA trainers, NBA dietitians, getting his NBA body right. That to me is the biggest grand scope thing for Donovan this year. I'm not worried about him being a shot blocker. I'm not really worried about him being a rebounder. The shooting, I think, is a thing that might come around eventually. And he'll get some opportunities here or there, particularly towards the end of the year. I think he's going to get a lot. But it's not a thing where I'm like, you have to rush him out there. There's no need. There's no need. I don't know, people are already going to be, he needs to play X minutes. Okay, we did this with Scoot. We did this with Shaedon. We do this every single time. Then by the end of the year, people are like, oh, that's what you meant. It's like, yes. Let's dive into some of these questions. For everybody wondering why my tweets are in bold, I don't know. When I tweet on my phone and on Twitter right now, it's very dumb. It puts it in bold. I know it wasn't an actual question, but yeah, if I do it on desktop, it's fine. But if I do it on the phone, it goes to hell. Don't know. From Zach Marcello, what should the expectations be for fans for Scoot going into year 2? What is a successful season for him? I saw somebody in here also asked, as far as what I've heard about Scoot and Shaedon. Nerd Runner, what's the word coming out of the org? Already progress made by Scoot and Shaedon this offseason. So I'll kind of go through both of these in the same way. I highlighted some of these questions in like things that I was looking to see in the Patreon that went up last night. It all blends together. But as it pertains to Scoot, he mentioned it today. He spent a lot of time working on his balance, his core, and his hips, and like getting more fluid through there and getting more power through his lower body, through his trunk. Which is, I think, a way of like it getting in the weeds. Like when he would drive, he'd get in the paint and he'd get his legs like a really wide gate. And instead of keeping his legs underneath him and powering up. And I think that's the gist of what I was getting. I'll ask him about it to clarify it on a little bit more tomorrow at training camp. But I think that's part of where that is coming from. And he's talking about that. I think it transfers in a couple different ways defensively. It definitely transfers on drives and keeping his base underneath him. And working on finishing. And also that balance, that weight transfer, the getting your power underneath you. Denny Avdia mentioned that as far as his continued success shooting. And I think that also feeds into Scoot shooting. Scoot, I think it's much more holistic with things. There's getting better as a shooter, having less turnovers, attacking with a plan, becoming a significantly better finisher at the rim. Like there's a lot of boxes he can check to get better. As far as what I've heard, not necessarily from the organization, but in general, there was a report from Coach Thorpe, totally blanking, on their show that I subscribed to. Anyways, but it was not a favorable review of some runs from Scoot this summer down in LA. I have nothing to conflict with that. But I don't have anything positive to report in that vein either. I think this is a very, very, very big year for Scoot. It's not a make or break season, but if you don't see some pretty significant growth at the end of the season in a couple different things, the eyebrow certainly goes up. I think that's just the reality. It's not his career's over or anything. And today, one of the things he said was that I still believe I can be one of the greatest point guards of all time. And I still believe that he believes that. I don't know if necessarily the greatest point guard of all time is on that list, but hey, go for it. The thing is about Scoot is with those shortcomings, it's very clear what he needs to clean up. And these aren't things where you're like, oh my God, this is so fundamentally broken. It's so this, it's so that. There's a lot to work with there. And I think that's one of those things where you go, all right, his path to getting from A to B is pretty clear. And everybody wants to harp on the shooting. It's probably the thing I'm the least concerned about. Having kind of watched his jumper and his development and things like, mild things like getting your footwork right and like getting to the point where it just becomes second nature, I believe Scoot can handle that and become to a 36, 37% three-point shooter. Like, I genuinely believe that. The things that concern me are the lack of plan when driving, the lack of explosion at the rim as a finisher, that most of his turnovers weren't as a aggression, bad play, like, I didn't like, but it was bad pass turnovers. Because as a passer, right hand, left hand, hook pass, bounce pass, live dribble, like, he's got the passing bag. But I can't remember the percentage. In fact, maybe I can pull it up here real quick. His turnovers were most of them, if I remember correctly, were based on his were bad pass turnovers. Let me see. Turnovers, yeah. So of his turnovers last year, 49 were on loose balls or lost ball. 123 were on bad passes. That's a pretty staggering difference. And bad passes can be quantified a million different ways. And for record, he had 212 total turnovers. So there's some team turnovers there as well. But again, the path is very clear for him to clean things up, right? My question more for Shaedon, and again, as I mentioned this in the Patreon, is what I'm about to say is going to seem like it's slanderous because I don't think people truly understand the difference of guys. I wonder if Shaedon is guard Andrew Wiggins or is he new era Brandon Roy? And by that I mean Andrew Wiggins with the Warriors is an all-star and NBA title winner, and maybe at one point in time the second most important player on that team. Like, that's a really good basketball player. But Andrew Wiggins is also the number one overall pick and had a lot of expectations around him, right? And I think that's where a lot of this stuff gets lost in the shuffle. Andrew Wiggins' first career averages 18, 4.5, 18.5, 4.5, and 2.3, shooting 45, 35, 72. Like, that's a pretty good career. He's got 3 seasons averaging over 20 points a game. His all-star season with the Warriors, he averaged 17, 4.5, 2.2 with a steal and almost a block a game. He obviously won Rookie of the Year in his rookie year where he averaged 17, 5, and 3 again. But I don't think he ever, number one, truly materialized and really showed his athleticism, showed his frame, his build, all of the different things he could do, with the exception of really that 1 year in where you really saw he was much more than his box score. And part of that probably has a lot to do with the fact that he was in Minnesota playing for a god-awful team and a god-awful franchise. But he's still a good player. With Shaedon Sharpe, do you have a 6'5" power wing type that is a good player, but leaves you wanting more because of his athleticism, because of his tools, because of his skills? Because there is a world where we've seen it, 25, 5, and 5. Like, that's the kind of, like, high-end capability that Shaedon Sharpe could have. And I'm not saying that if he doesn't have 25, 5, and 5, that he's trash. And I'm saying if he's 18, 4, and 4, that's still really good. That's better than most players all time. And a guy that you definitely want to keep and build forward with. Now, you don't want to give him a max deal like you would Andrew Wiggins got, but I digress. So the question becomes, like, what version of Shaedon Sharpe is there? You know, if he's a guy who this season comes out, wins the starting job, which I think is going to happen. I think you're looking at a starting lineup of Ant, Shaedon, Denny, JG, and DA. I think it's a near certainty that that'll happen. But I'm wondering which way this is going to go for Shea. What I heard from the Canada camp and the workouts and the runs and all the stuff surrounding Shaedon. This is doing the opposite of what I think the Blazers probably want. But I was told that Shaedon has kind of found that next gear. Now, it's one thing to do it in the offseason. It's one thing to do it in the Rico Hines runs or whatever else. But it's better than getting negative feedback, which, has been made a little public at least, from at least a couple sources, as it pertains to Scoot. So, in one hand, out in the other kind of a situation. I think that's where we stand, at least right now, kind of going into it. Arthur Shoney, my question is, how much have the young wings improved from three for spacing? Do Walker, Kamara, Repair, and Murray look better in this area after the offseason? Kamara, Tamani was the only one of that group who spoke today. And two was very confident in his offseason development. He highlighted how physical he wants to play offensively, which also Denny Avdia said, and also Deandre Ayton said about Denny, and I believe Tease said about Denny, and then DA also said about Tumani. So I think you're looking at Denny and Tumani as kind of being some power wings who look to be physical on both sides of the floor, but even more so offensively, which is a nastiness I think you kind of need within this franchise that they're lacking. As it pertains to Jabari, Roops, and Chris Murray, it's going to be interesting to see just how much they trust or have developed or have honed in on that shooting. As of right now, Jabari, Roops, and Murray, if I had to make a projection, number one, they're out of the rotation. Number two, they're probably going to spend time in the G League. Roops in particular, but Murray and Walker too. I was talking to somebody about this today. Think about this. I love Jabari as a human being, and I think he's a fun basketball player. But as of right now, your starting your center rotation is 4 deep. You've got DA, you've got Rob, you've got WAP, and you've got DC. Okay. At the 4 spot, you've got JG. Denny's probably going to get some time there. 2's probably going to get some time there. That is, 6 players in front of Jabari? Your rotation is only 9, and we haven't touched the guards. So, Bari's on the outside looking in, which is unfortunate because he's in a contract year. So, it's one of those spots where you look at it and you go, do you put Jabari on the bench to rot, or do you allow him to at least go play some basketball with the remix and maybe show that he's found his shot? Because Bari spent a ton of time breaking down his shot and building it back up. And it's a really, really interesting spot. Kirk's not the only one in the comments who keeps bringing this up. The Blazers are not going to trade away veteran players who are better for nothing so that they can play young players who haven't shown the capacity or willingness or ability to take those spots. Period. Full stop. You can yell it into the sky and all you want. Play the young guys. It's not happening. And it shouldn't. I fully agree with what they're doing. You do not put players out on the floor that have not A, earned it, B, have the capacity to do so. That is how you develop an awful organization. See, the Charlotte Hornets. It's what they've done for years. The Pistons have done that. It's, don't want any part of that. But I do think that there is going to be some interest in all 4 of those guys' development. And I've talked to specifically about this. He just wants to play. He does not care if it's with the team or the remix. That guy is a certified gym rat hooper. He just wants to play. He wanted to play with the remix last year, but the Blazers were one rolled ankle away from needing Roops for 15 minutes a night. So he traveled with the big club. Otherwise, he would have spent significantly more time with the remix. And they, to be honest, probably would have built a lot of the offense around him to let him kind of develop, which, Sergio Oliva is going to end up being he is the head coach of the remix. And I think that that's probably some stuff that they're going to tinker with. And I think it's going to be very interesting to dive into. So, Coach Caruso, Matt Caruso, sure the wins and losses come to develop, but what would you say the actual over-under should be? I think Vegas has got it right at 22.5. That's a terrifying line. Like, I won't touch it. Not for like some, reason above gambling. It's a really good line, and I'm not going anywhere near that. I believe there was someone out there that had them projected to win 18. Kevin Pelton's index, which uses some numbers that are very favorable in the sense to like college players coming to the NBA who project like Clingan, who have very, 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 very high box score ratings in the sense of production per minute, blocks and rebounds in particular, that have them all the way up to 32 wins. But that also factors in like Ant, JG, DA playing probably pretty heavy minutes for 70 plus games. There's a number that he puts in there. It's either 68 or 70 games. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think when it's all said and done, looking at the schedule, we were joking. I shouldn't say joking. We were talking about the schedule release, and then we kind of revisited it today with a few folks. The first 30 games are very difficult. Like, it's 27 Western Conference teams, and most of them, like, you're not getting, you're not getting the Spurs and the Jazz all over the place. You're getting a lot of tough teams. There's a likelihood that they go like 7-23 in their first 30 games. Like, that's a real possibility. At that point in time, you don't really need to sit a ton of guys. You got to win 26 more games to crack that threshold. Like, that's not happening. So, I don't think they're going to have to, drive this thing off a cliff towards the end of the season, but they might shut some things down and look at the young guys. For everybody in the comments asking about a lot of the draft prospects, in about a week, I will have a first draft board for the 2025 draft and a like how to watch college basketball this year, who you need to watch, what you need to watch. With that, as a side note, I'll give you a caveat right now. Ratio Farm is coming to town on the 16th. I believe that's the game that they're here. Sorry, my brain is scattered. 2 of the top 10 2025 prospects play for So if you want to see them, come in the building and check them out. Noah Sengwe and Ben Saroff are both going to be there. Somebody asked, Gabe Simpson asks, is Kevin Lamar still on the call? Yes, absolutely still on the call. Big Hoff says, asks, what does Ant have to do to get in the All-Star discussion this year? Ant would need to have a 30.5 rebound, 5 assist season while shooting like 48, 40, 90. It's just, they're going to be bad. And when you're that bad, we saw Brad Beal with the Wizards have I believe 30.5, 6 assist, 5 rebound season and not make it's the highest statistical combination without making an All-Star game belongs to Brad Beal, if I'm not mistaken. And this Blazers team is probably going to be worse than that Wizards team, to be blunt. So I don't think he's going to get there. To be honest, I think the best version of Anfernee Simons is 27, 6, and 5. And that's fully unchained all the way down the path. Which, again, the list of players in NBA history who've had that season for a good, bad, or otherwise team is quite short. It's not a knock of he won't be that or this, that, or the other. It's no, Ant could have a really a unbelievable season. It's just not going to matter as much because the team is not going to be very good. Perry's thoughts at Sparks PDX. After seeing the media interviews, I like the idea of DA and Clingan going at each other in practice. I could see Clingan pushing DA to be even better. Do you think it's possible or likely DA has such a good start to the season and becomes untouchable come trade deadline? Untouchable is something I don't put on guys unless they're generational. And even then, Dame. Dame wasn't untouchable in the sense of if Milwaukee came calling 3 years ago and said, we want to swap Giannis for Dame, you would do it. And that is someone who personally loves Dame as a human and as a basketball player. Giannis is a 7-foot freak of nature who's got the likelihood to end up as one of the top 20 probably players of all time. It's a sliding scale. Untouchable is LeBron James in his prime. That's untouchable. 2013 Miami Heat LeBron James, untouchable, untradeable. Untouchable. That's for me. Now, I think when you're talking about general fans, I think you're talking about a really, really, really good player, foundational player. DA has the talent. The talent has never been a question with DA. It's a willingness to play a certain style or a commitment or an understanding to how you go about those things. And I think DA has matured quite a bit over the last year. The only way I see DA becoming anywhere near this is if the Blazers and DA's camp came to an agreement on like on an extension that was below market value, as it were. Like, that's the only way I could see this happening. Right? I just don't. I don't see it any other way right now. I would love it if DA did that. Because if you went into the future with DA and Donovan as your centers, I think you're in a really good spot because I think stylistically you can play a lot of different ways. But there's also the world that exists where Donovan Clingan does turn into, Edie or Jokic or Embiid in the sense of being one of those exceptions as a monster who can play those minutes. Maybe I'm wrong. I think he's like a 28 a night guy, 28 minutes a night. Maybe he is a guy who can play 32, 33, 34. And like he can anchor and be your guy, But it's interesting to see kind of where that is kind of sitting. Jake and Rip City at Jake and Aussies, a vibes pulse in comparison to prior media days. The vibes were pretty damn good, to be honest, and I think a lot of that is relief from last year, not aimed to deal with the Dame saga, but also an understanding where the season's at. One thing I noticed today: a lot of new hair, a lot of new facial hair features. DA was sporting the mustache and the longer goatee. Lot of very trimmed. Tumani had a incredible mustache, just very, very laced up, and then he threw the braids in. Fun little side note: I saw two before he was coming to the back. Or I saw two in the back before he was coming to the front. Talked to him for a second, and you guys can't see it right now because my headphones are covering up, but my hair is incredibly long, and he was like, "Whoa, man." And I don't know if you guys saw two delivering TVs the other day for the Blazers kind of doing that thing. His fro was enormous, and he tucked that all back in. He kind of, tapped it up. He was like, "What do you think? You like it? Look good? Look good?" And so, it's first day of school for a lot of guys. And I find that to be an interesting spot for where that stuff is at. Guys, there's not that their heads are only there, but I think that there was more of that feeling than there was last year. In all the years that I've done this is year 10, 11, something like that, 12, I don't know. This was the most matter-of-fact media day I've ever taken part of. There's nothing newsy, nothing really huge, other than maybe Scoot, when asked about what he learned from his rookie year, the food, which, Scoot's a different bird in a sense. I don't judge. Look, you come from Georgia up here and Northwest and Portland, we got some good food up here, no doubt about that. Also, Matisse Thybulle, when asked about the best places to skateboard, he said, "I've never skateboarded a day in my life," and then followed that up with, "I've got a contract to uphold," which he skateboards. It's okay, but that was a fun little back and forth. Let's see. What are some of your bullet points you consider success this season? I highlight that's from Anthony Smith. Those are things that I outlined in the Patreon about a couple different players. I'll go into more in depth when I have the play. I'm going to do player previews over the next 2 weeks. I will be at FanFest. I will be at training camp tomorrow, and I'll be at training camp Friday, and then I will be in Seattle next Friday for the game against the Clippers. So in between those periods, I'll be pushing out. I'll do some video. I think I'm going to do most of them written, but I might do some like shorter, like if I get a chance to talk one of the players either one-on-one or just kind of get a second with them, I might come on here and follow those up here. to kind of go from there. But the bullet points that I would consider success is it's all development based. I came into this without a single wins based expectation whatsoever. I want to see Scoot develop. I want to see Shaedon develop. I want to see Ant develop. I want to see Denny develop. Like, does Denny go from multi-tooled, very valuable player to like top tier role player in the NBA? Like, does he have the capacity to be like an Andre Iguodala type? Do everything, like just like whatever you need fixed, Denny's got you. You need a playmaker? I got you. You need a bit of an a-hole to ruffle some feathers? I got you. You need somebody to defend? I got you. You need a timely corner three? I got you. You need a rebound? I got you. Like, that's like, what version of Denny do you get? This player that came over from Washington that like definitely showed some more promise. Like, Denny right now is 15, 5, and 5 plus. Can he be 18, 8, and 5? 18, 8, and 4? And can he do it with efficiency? Like, I don't have any, like, I don't need Denny to go out there and drop 25 a game. That's I don't think that's part of who he is. He said it himself, like, I want to get my teammates involved. He has a natural playmaking desire and ability. How much is that, like, how much does he need to have the ball to figure that out? Can he do it? Can he toggle on and off between being a primary distributor versus being a secondary creator? I think those are the things I'm looking at. Like, what does Donovan look like when he gets to see legs under him? Like, those are like the success points that I'm looking for. It's all development based. And cross myself, whatever you want to go with, whoever you believe in, whether you believe in anything or nothing, barring all injuries, there's going to be some minor knocks. I started to do this last year, and then I wanted to throw myself into traffic because trying to do that in depth with that many injuries just didn't make any sense because of just how inconsistent and varied things were. And as long as things can be consistent and you have these markers and finish lines that you can go to get a basic understanding of things, I think that's important. Aaron, at Dirty Blazers fan, does Shea demeanor give you any concern for his career outlook? He's the most talented player on the roster, although his aloof personality seems to hinder his competitiveness. If he was more aggressive, I don't think there'd be a debate between Scoot and Shea who should start. I don't think there should be a debate between who should start between Scoot and Shea because Shaedon Sharpe is better at basketball. And he's bigger, and he fits better alongside Anfernee Simons, which means it makes more sense for Denny, which means it makes more sense for JG, which means it makes more sense for DA. Things make more sense. You want things to make sense. I have had this discussion offline a lot, and I've talked to a lot of fans about this when they've come up to me and, what do you think of Shaedon? I think we do ourselves a disservice when we take somebody's personality and think that they either work harder or don't work enough, because I've seen quiet guys who are some of the hardest workers you've ever. Roops doesn't say a word. He's very quiet, very reserved. You will not find a person in that locker room who thinks that Roops isn't the hardest worker on the team. He spends more, like, they have to pull him out of the gym. Like, he is a lunatic. He spends more hours there than anyone. He is a hooper for real. Like, I know everybody hates the whole Mamba mentality stuff, but that's Roops. Like, he's a sicko. He works so hard. He's quiet though. He doesn't say much. I don't think people would associate him with this killer mentality or this insane work ethic. Shea's he marches to a different drum. And there's been plenty of guys that are like I don't think anybody looked at, this maybe isn't the best comparison, but I think it's kind of funny. Like, nobody looked at Eli Manning and was like, he doesn't work. And Eli's out here with this dumb face all the time. He's a Hall of Famer. Like, you know what I mean? So I think you have to be careful confusing those two. I will say, though, most young guys, the staggering majority of them, don't know what it takes to work hard in the NBA. Like, I've talked to Jason Quick did a story about Ant and like him working it out with Phil Beckner, where Phil basically told him to get lost, and Ant was like, no. Like, Ant broke down crying and found out what it really took to work. Dame worked his ass off. He had the license to Lillard videos, and then he took it to another level. Like, you learn how to. Very few guys understand what it takes to work at an insane level to be truly different than getting experience. Like, as you get older, particularly when you see guys who have that level of work ethic, that's what that looks like. Which is why you want to have veterans around who have that work ethic, who understand it, that mentality. And so I've been told that Shai has kind of discovered that. Now, the proof is in the pudding. You can say whatever you want to say, but what does it actually look like? And I think that's the question that's up for debate. Anton Smith, with big physical defenders like Denny, DC, Rob Will, etc., do you think we could just beat Bruce teams physically, similar to the old Grizzlies with Zebo, Gasol, Allen? This is an organizational directive. As of right now, I do this every couple of years. For those that are familiar with the stuff that I did at Blazers Edge, you may have remembered this. I've gone through and based on minutes projections and likely rotations, I've built out teams in the NBA based on weighted age and size. And by size, I mean impactful size. Height, weight, wingspan, reach. The Blazers might be the biggest team in the NBA. Legitimately. Think about it. Their starting lineup's going to go 6'4", 6'5", 6'8", 6'9". I mean, I think Denny's 6'9" in shoes, JG's 6'9" in shoes, and 7 foot in DA. And other than Ant, every one of those guys is freaking Ant's cut, but Shai, look, if you're talking about muscle watch, Shai looked big as hell today. I was like, damn, looks like he's about 215, 220. Denny is 240 pounds. Denny is a truck. Absolute unit. Good Lord. JG's I want to say 235, 240, right around, about the same size. He's a little bit broader, but looks a little skinnier. He might be 230. And then DA's, 250. Now, you throw in your rotation when you've got 7'2", 280. You've got 6'10". I think Rob's 255. I mean, 2 is 6'7", 6'8", 230. Jabari's 6'7", 240. It's a big ass team. They're big. They're big. They're long. And organizationally, this is something they've set out to do because those Damian Lillard teams. And again, if you're familiar from my time at Blazers Edge, one of the biggest things I belabored was this. They were the least athletic and smallest team in the NBA. They just were. Outside of Nurk, it was Nurk and Myers. That's it. And you throw Enes Kanter in there for a short period of time. Hassan, and they're their size just came from their centers. Aminu was relatively big. Mo was tall, but he had a waist the size of a freaking beer can. CJ's 6'2". And you had Dame and CJ out there, 6'2" and a half each. Both played 30-plus minutes a night. It was a massive detriment to the team. And they never got the stuff around that made sense. What they have done, and it's something I think I would err on the side of, which is why I kind of support it. They've been more willing to take risks and opportunities with guys who physically profile better. Jabari, Roops, Chris. What do they all have in common? They're all 6'7" plus with higher level athleticism, wingspan, reach. Or in Jabari's case, even with athleticism, the explosiveness in there, the strength and the IQ. And all of them have the one thing in common. None of them have projected as great shooters, and they thought, look, the thing that's harder to find is size, athleticism, other skills. The single easiest thing to develop and or teach in the NBA is shooting. If one of those guys hits, ta-da, there you go. It makes sense. And I think that's something that they're erring on the side of. Let's be bigger, longer, stronger, more physical. And now they've added 6'9", 240-pound Denny Avdia. They traded for Jeremy Grant, who's 6'9", 230 pounds. The only small, quote-unquote, small player on the active roster is Scoot. Ant's skinny, but he's 6'3.5", 6'4". Nobody else, excuse me, my nose is driving me crazy. Nobody else on the team is tiny. It's a big bleeping team. And that is something that to answer this question, I do think it is something that they want to do. They want to wear teams out. Like you look at the NFL now, it's swinging back to more about running the ball, the physicality. And I think that's with the way the rules have changed in the NBA, that is something you're starting to see as well. There's more physicality in the team. There's more physicality in the NBA. Few people asked about whether or not I'm bringing in a co-host. We're going solo for now. Right? I don't think there was everything else is up in the air right now. Brian Henry asked, Chauncey's lame ducks. What can he show the organization to get extended? Does he want to be? Chauncey was asked this question, and obviously he was prepared for it. But I thought his answer was really good as an example. He said, there's not a coach in the NBA that should feel comfortable, whether in their first year or fourth year, because you can get fired any year. And he highlighted some coaches, wink, wink, nod, nod, get fired in their first year or before their first year. And, Adrian Griffin, you look at Darvin Ham getting out of there quick. That happens. So to his point, okay, is it an uncomfortable spot for the Blazers and Chauncey? I would say yes. But I think you can make very clear and fair arguments for both for why the Blazers didn't pick up the option and why they should. But I understood how they got where they got. And my pushback to not extending is see what happens. And then that's the reason you have contracts. And if Chauncey goes from being a guy who publicly has said that he wanted to work with a more veteran team to going, hey, you know what? We really did something here. We really helped develop Scoot. We really helped develop Shea. We really helped develop Denny. We really helped develop Ant and Donovan and Tu and Bari and Roops. Like, if all of a sudden that's a thing, then maybe that makes sense. Maybe you get to the end of this year and you go, it just really wasn't what we're looking for, and you're looking for a head coach that's either better at that or you go down a different path. If you do win the lottery and you do have the ability to draft the number 1 overall pick, whether it's Cooper or Ace, I think it depends on, what coach do you want to get for that? And so you allow if you're the Blazers, you allow yourself the flexibility. And if you're Chauncey, you allow yourself the chance to see if this is what you want to do. And this is how you want to pursue this, is working with a young team and on the way back up. I wouldn't begrudge him one bit if he worked out this year and was like, I can't do this. If I'm going to coach, I need a more veteran-laden team. I need a team that's a little bit further down the road. Because working with a young, developing team is not for everyone. Just like there's a reason why when you get to a certain level, we need to bring in a championship-level coach. How many times have you heard that? How many times have you heard that? We need to go bring in a championship-level coach. Because you do that because the coach that you had was a developmental coach or an A to B coach, not a B to C coach. And maybe Chauncey sees himself as the B to C coach. I don't know. But I think that's the road that you cross at the end of the season. I think. That's where I see it, at least. I think that's about covers everything. Like I said, it was a very light media day. We're kind of real quick running through some stuff. Scoot talked about working his physicality and understanding of his body. Shea mentioned that, he's 100% after his surgery. He's just really anxious to get on the floor. Mentioned that he's taken cold tub baths, even though he doesn't want to. Those are the little things he's trying to do to try to help his body along. Ant clarified that he's perfectly happy here, and I think Ant is perfectly happy here right now. I think everything's cool there. For everybody's like, oh, he wants out of here. If Ant wanted out of here, Ant would be gone, to be blunt. Same with Jeremy. Matisse Thybulle was a wonderful smartass in his questions, about just being himself and not skateboarding. DA was fun and full of energy. Remember today he mentioned, or I shouldn't say remember if you didn't catch it. Today somebody asked him where he gets all his energy from, and he said it's from the juices. All the juices that he drinks. But he also had some really interesting thoughts and takes on helping Donovan Clingan develop and bringing young guys along. And that's where I think a lot of, when I was talking about earlier, the maturity of DeAndre, I think you're starting to see that come through a little bit more. Donovan was, I think, a little nervous up there, but otherwise he was very much about businesslike and about getting things done. Again, Rob talked about his health and where he's at. Denny, even up there, you could tell he was fiery. I think he's going to be a really fun guy to talk to this year. I did a show in Israel a couple days ago, and boy, do they love him there. And the things they all told me about him as a human being. I have yet to run into a single person who has worked with or known Denny or coached Denny who hasn't been like, you will love him. He's an absolutely wonderful human. He's a bit of a hard ass and not angry but temperamental, which is something Sprague and I talk about this team, to be blunt, needing an asshole. They need a little bit of edge. He brings a physicality and a toughness that I think this team needs on both sides of the ball, to be blunt. He uses a level of physicality on both sides of the ball that I think this team needs. I think Tumani and him together are going to be terrorists defensively. I think they're really good. There were a couple players last year that I talked to after the game on opposing teams about Tumani, and I asked them about Tumani guarding him, picking him up, 90 feet, and they would say something along that mother bleeper, or, and they said it respectfully, he's tough, man. So I think those are things to watch for. And two, again, in his press conference mentioned how much he wants to be more physical and more engaged offensively and working on balancing his 3-point shooting. I think that about wraps up. Like I said, it was a very, very slow, cold, chill, relaxed media day. Nothing really newsy came out of it. So I think that's where we'll wrap it up here. Thank you all for being here. Rate, review, subscribe, help us grow the show. We're going to have I'm going to have a ton of content coming out in the next 2 weeks. If there's things you want to see, if you are a subscriber to the Patreon, if there's things you want to see, there's things you want me to talk about, there's things you want me to dive into, please message me either on Twitter or you can do it in Patreon. The DM service, the messaging service is open. If you're hey, I'm really interested in X and it's something I can dive into, I'll pull up Synergy, I'll pull up Second Spectrum, I'll dive into the film and see if there's something there I can pull up for you guys. I will say the first player preview that I am working on, it's just about done, is on Shaedon Sharpe. And it's a takeoff from one of the things that I started doing last year when Shaedon was running the offense, which was charting all of Shaedon's passing as a pick and roll creator and kind of where he can grow from that going forward, then springboarding into the season and expanding his game. So that's going to be up here in a couple of days. I'll have general player previews as we get ready to go into camp as well, and I'll be hopping on here and probably doing more of these more frequently. I'll probably follow up after both the camp days that I attend. Other than that, thank you guys so very much. Again, you can if you can, rate, review, subscribe, help us grow, help me grow, get the YouTube channel humming along again because the season's here. Same thing with Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/Jacked Ramsays. You can find me on social media at Danny Marang. You can email the show, jackedramsays@gmail.com. And hopefully I'll be able to bring in a couple of players, a couple of guests before the season, before we get things going too soon. Other than that, everybody, take care, have a wonderful night, and I'll talk to you soon.